Today is April 11th, 2015, and the last video clip that I made was April 8th. So a few days have gone by, and nothing unusual or anything different. I just actually had a lot of things going on that I was busy taking care of, and starting up a new college term again, along with the court things that are going on and this nonprofit that I talked about. Just a whole lot of things all at once. But I've been meaning to get back to the rape by Alvaro Pardo. And so where I left off with that is that I was fired from my workplace after I was pregnant. And at the time that I was, when I was fired when I was pregnant, over 3 months pregnant, I was also, as I explained, forced out of my housing, which is something that these government individuals were doing to me. And then I had received this phone number from a man who came in named Henry. And so it was all the same kind of thing occurred with the United States government forcing me out of one situation and then just kind of leaving me with one possible person to call or contact, who in an obviously desperate moment I might have reached out to or thought, maybe I could find work, go out, just figure out where a good place to find a house or apartment to live was. But at the time that I got fired, I was completely depleted of my money because I had started paying for my own rent, and it's not really inexpensive to live in Washington, D.C. And so my plan had been to, now that I had achieved being self-sufficient out there, for lack of a better term, my goal from there was to start actually saving money, and with money that I saved, to be able to pay for my own psychological evaluation, because the government wasn't forthcoming on that. They weren't scheduling anything or doing anything about it, even though I kept trying to follow this judge's order, and no one was willing to even work with me about it. They really just wanted to stall for time. I'm not quite sure if maybe someone even thought that I was like having a good time out there and assumed that I was just going to forget everything, forget about my son and stay out there or something. But that was never my plan. My son was always, everything that I did was for my son. So he was never far from my thoughts at all. And so I went to a couple of parties and that kind of thing eventually, with a few people, or I went out and socialized a little bit. But it was like a desperate last-ditch means effort of socializing for survival, basically, because on my own, I really wouldn't have cared to go out with all those people. Everybody went out on election night and partied and got together with people, and I stayed at home in the apartment that I was paying for half of and read a book. And so I definitely enjoy being social and going out with people, but I like having everything squared away. So if I have everything squared away the way that I want it to be, then I feel that I have, I also try to make out some time for myself to go out and be social, do different things, that kind of thing. I don't appreciate or enjoy being forced to quote-unquote network. And I'm just not, I've never networked for survival means. I mean, like when I'm comfortable, a lot of people just network all the time. And I think that they're probably very savvy to do that. I think it's, you know, a good idea, but it kind of grates against my conscience in a sense, because I don't feel that, I don't want to spend time pretending that I like to be with people unless I really enjoy being with people. And actually, fortunately enough, there are lots of kinds of people that I enjoy kind of just at least hanging out with. You know, I could have a drink with someone or spend a little time with a large group of people, and that's not going to be like a big pain at all. But to be constantly going out or trying to develop a friendship based on what they can do for me, that's not really how I've ever lived my life. So I didn't really appreciate having these sudden disasters thrown my way by the United States government and cops and intelligence individuals that were involved in that, just so that they could try to force me into some other man's house. And so, you know, here I was suddenly without a housemate, without a job, and had no time to put together some savings. I was pregnant, and I'd already had the ultrasound, and so basically, here I was, you know, in the middle of nowhere. This one guy from the Post Pub drove me out. He said he paid for me for a hotel for basically for like a week or so, or a few days at least at this hotel that he knew of, and so I'd have a place to go because my housemate had just ditched. Well, you know, had to leave. And I'm very sure that he's part of the government. He was from Morocco, but it doesn't really matter where he's from. I mean, I believe he was working with the CIA. That is my personal opinion. So, so then he took off, and here I was at this hotel in the middle of nowhere, kind of. It was kind of close to a spaghetti factory, and a few other restaurants. So I actually went out. The first thing that I did was I went out with resumes and I tried to get a job. So I worked really hard to touch base with some people and see if I could work as a server, because that's what I'd been doing. And I'm a decent server. I'm, you know, not maybe, you know, a $500 tip a table kind of a server. I've not been trained to do that kind of waitressing or serving, but I think I do my best to keep people happy, and have had some definite success with then eventually acquiring regulars who enjoy having a table that I'm at. So, you know, I think I do okay. And I did make some pretty good tips some of the time at the Post Pub. So I worked really hard, just kind of, I don't know how you would describe it, just door to door with restaurants, and looking for any kind of server job at all. And I didn't have anybody say, okay, we can hire you right away. And I really needed to, I didn't know how long I was going to have the hotel. I knew I couldn't have it that long. I hadn't made any other contacts out there. And no one was hiring me right away. One person was saying, you know, maybe in a couple of weeks, in a few weeks. And I needed a job right away. So there I was, and sitting in the hotel room, and the government knew all along that I had this number from Henry, and it was pretty much the only phone number that I had. And he'd said, if you need anything, please call, let's and let's go out and maybe socialize. And so I kind of thought, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting here in this hotel room, and I did try to look for work all day, and I'm not doing anything right now tonight. So maybe I should just go out and try to be social and have something to do, and maybe I can ask around, to keep my ears open and see if there's anything that's available that he might know of. Not asking him directly, so he doesn't feel like I'm using him, of course, but sometimes things come up in conversation, and if he knows the area and has been in this area, maybe he would know of a place that might need someone. So so I just thought, well, I'm not doing anything else. I may as well do that. And I called the number, and he said, yeah, he said, we're going out to a place to go dancing, like to dance. And I really like dancing. So they, so anyway, they took me out to this, and actually, before I get into all of that, there was I had already, by that time that I was by the time that I went out with them and went dancing or whatever, I had already miscarried the baby, because as soon as I got as soon as I was fired, I stayed with someone in a different part of Maryland briefly, and I miscarried. And then, and actually I wouldn't call it miscarriage, but I miscarried after the baby was killed. And the baby was killed, and it was the United States government that did it. It happened when I was being scanned for an MRI, and it was the moment that it happened, and I knew it. And I had not wanted that to happen, and I didn't choose or ever indicate to anyone that I ever wanted an abortion or that I didn't want the baby. And I was having really bad back pain in my lower back, and in hindsight, it was basically probably from a really severe form of ultrasound, because it had some of the same kinds of effects, but it was just really, it was really bad. So I was basically getting tortured by the United States government. It was also happening at the high rise where I was sharing this apartment with a guy from Morocco with. And at one point, a Pentagon helicopter came up, like I could see the Pentagon from my apartment. It was maybe a couple miles away if you went as the bird flies from my window to the Pentagon window. I'm sure that someone with binoculars who looked out the window from the Pentagon could look right directly into my room. So then at some point when I was in that apartment, in my apartment, which had no curtains, by the way, around that huge window in the living room area, which is where I was and where I slept, at some point someone thought it was funny to bring a military helicopter up to that floor. And they basically got some kind of clearance from the government because they were flying low enough that it was only 7th floor level, and it was a helicopter, and it was right next to my window. And when I say right next to my window, I mean like my back to this window over here was probably as close, maybe a little further away than that, but it was very close. The nose of the helicopter was right there next to my window. And there were a bunch of military guys looking in and like laughing. And here I was, and I was getting tortured by the government. They were using remote technology to do things, causing like a vibrating sensation to my lower stomach, and they were doing ultrasound, and they were doing it a lot. And so I just thought, okay, this is really strange, because I knew that Chris Dabney worked with the government, and so I thought, why is the United States government torturing me when I have this baby? And I kind of thought maybe it's because someone thinks that the baby is from James Cartwright, like someone thinks something happened with him, and that the chief strategist of the Pentagon had impregnated me. So I thought maybe someone was hoping that I'd get rid of it for that reason.